Now, a lot of people may argue that what we're about to talk about has nothing to do with any of that, but let me ask you if they're right. With the time we've got left, you've directly advised the Prime Minister against repealing Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act. How did he respond, first of all?
Well, I don't want to talk about private conversations with him, but, you know, he talked about the right of freedom of speech. Now, we all respect that, and everyone knows me from my background. I respect freedom of speech, and I'm quite happy for even racists, the most ardent racists, to have their say. But, you know, the repeal of Section 18C will start causing problems for us. You know, I find it amazing that there's such a united front against this. And it's all based upon the Andrew Bolt case, and we know that it was all based upon the Andrew Bolt case. And I went back to that case and had a good read of it. And I'll be quite frank, I think that they're barking up the wrong tree on this. They need to sit down.
The government, you mean? The
government is, that's right. So they need to sit down, and I know George Brandis, the Attorney General, is quite a good lawyer, quite a sensible man, and sit down with the Chinese, the Jewish, the Muslim and other communities that are out there, the Aboriginal community as well, who's saying repeal of Section 18C will be a disaster. We need to look at how we're happy to sit down and talk about amendments and strengthening that section and hitting the right targets, but the abolition and repeal would be, you know, dangerous for us.
Now, you mentioned the Andrew Bolt case and the articles which you say you've reread. Do you believe the government would be going down this path at all were it not for the Andrew Bolt case?
I have a sneaky suspicion of that, yes.
Why do you think that?
Well, you know, we've only had one, you know, this one case seems to be the huge talk that's been around for quite a while. And in actual fact, the law's been there for over 15 years, you know, and we've got to deal with real, you know, racism does not exist in our society, should not exist in our society, I should say. And we can't go on in this way of accepting that. And I just find it, I know Andrew Bolt, I know he's not a racist, I know he's an all right bloke. I just find it strange that he went down that path of talking about race.
Well, you say he's not a racist. Do you believe the offending articles, do you believe in the offending articles he's guilty of racial vilification?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. That's the judge's decisions at the end of the day. But for me, it did offend me, and I was actually pretty angry after reading it.
But you couldn't argue that it's racial vilification? Perhaps it's just... he would argue he's expressing his right to free speech, and indeed that is the major argument now.
Look, he may argue that case, but, you know, we have free speech in Australia, and it's pretty wide free speech, and we do also have some caveats on that free speech in regard to, you know, libel laws and so on. But, you know, when you look at what he said, and to me it was quite a total misunderstanding of Aboriginal society, the Aboriginal kinship structure and how people see themselves. I just find it, you know, there are other ways he could have put his story, he could have put his arguments. I just found it quite strange, the area that he went into.
What do you say to the argument that in a country which has free speech underpinning all its media and what people say and write, that there is, or should be encompassed in that, the right to offend?
Well, I'd find that quite bizarre. You know, the first rules you learn as a child is how you behave and how you be respectful and how you don't offend other people.
Sure, but that's about manners. That's not written into law.
I know it's not written into law, but, you know, when you talk about race and you look at the history of race, it's almost living in ignorance. You know, we just fought a Second World War only 60 years ago, which was about race. It was about religion. It was about Jewish people. It was about, you know, the Slavic people. It was about a wide range of people who were sent off to concentration camps and murdered. We've seen Rwanda, and that was about the issue of race. I just find that some people seem to talk and chat in a vacuum. In actual fact, we don't. We have thousands of years of history in this area, and we need to have that in the conversation as well.
Now, you mentioned the other key bodies, the Jewish community, even the Chinese community, that seem to be lining up alongside you and others saying do not repeal 18C of this Act. How significant is it that these various groups are now coming to the fore?
Oh, look, I'm not surprised they did, because to me it was an ignorance, and I'm not going to use that word lightly. It was an ignorance that they thought that this was only about free speech, and I'm talking about the government in this area. It is more than that. It is more than about free speech, and I'm not excuse me, I'm not surprised that the strong support in non-repealing this section of the Act has come out, you know, and it is people, and across political corridors, Liberals, Labor, and Greens, even non-political people. It is across religion, like Muslims and Christians and Jewish people, and it is a real large cross-section of Australian society. And I think they need to listen to that. I think they need to take it on board. And knowing the Attorney General, that people are quite happy to sit down and talk to him about amendments and tightening it up. But repeal would be, as I said, a disaster.
How strong is your principle on this? I mean, would you find it impossible to continue in your role advising the government if they did repeal 18C?
No, I think no. That would be silly. That would be very childish. In fact, we've got large battles to fight in regard to Aboriginal people and for Australia as a nation. We saw the Closing the Gap figures, and how the long journey we have to have there in that long battle. And those things we need to have in place to win that battle by the end of this year. So I think it would be very immature and very stupid of me to do that.
Warren Mundine, we thank you very much for coming in to talk to us. I'm sure many of your thoughts will echo through the next few days. Thank you very much for being here.
Okay, thank you.